Wow, I didn't say anything and you already got quiet. It sounds like the school bell went off and everyone just sat down real quick. Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank you for being here this morning. My name is John Smolinski. I'm the Executive Director of the Wakefield Area Chamber of Commerce. And on behalf of my two friends and partners from the Stoneham Chamber and the North Reading Chamber, Megan Day and Rob Weiner, who are hiding at the back of the room, they're waving to us. I'd like to thank you all very much for being here and thanking them for being part of this legislative breakfast. It's turned into quite the event for us here locally to have our state representatives and state senators here. It's a pleasure that they take their time out of their busy schedules to all collectively come together, which shows the cohesion of our legislative body and the relationship we have with them, that they're willing to come out and spend this kind of time with us. In a moment, I'm going to introduce Senator Lewis, who will introduce our participating legislators, but I'd also like to make a couple more acknowledgements if I could. I know there's too many, and if I try to name them individually, I know I'll miss someone and get myself in hot water, but there are a large number of members of the Chamber Board of Directors here today, and I don't think they'll stand for me, but I'd like to at least give a round of applause to the board members. Those board members of the chambers are the one that keep us on the straight and narrow. They set the policy, they set the direction, and it's our job to get us to that destination that is set by the board. But it's their leadership and support that allows Megan, Rob, and myself to be able to do and accomplish some of the things we do throughout the year. Those of you that belong to those chambers know that there are many worthwhile events put on by the various chambers. And we're very fortunate in this area that the chambers of commerce are very cooperative and interact very easily with one another. And there is a lot of cross-pollination with members. We share that, we respect that, and we benefit from that. So it's very important that we understand that while we might have our own individual towns or regions or geographical locations, we're all of the same mission, of the same goal. So you are blessed, as we are, that we can work like this cooperatively. And there are a few other chambers around us that we do with that collectively make us a stronger voice for you within our towns and communities, and with our state representatives and state senators that are here today. With that being said, in each of our communities, and I know it is in Wakefield, we have the opportunity to work not only with our legislators, but our town representatives. And that partnership and that communication and that working relationship is just as important as it is with these ladies and gentlemen up here. So I'd like to acknowledge who they are at this particular moment. And if you will allow me, I'll start with Wakefield. We have our Wakefield Town Manager, Steve Mayo. Vice Chair of our Town Council, Jonathan Chimes. And someone that works very closely with me is very important to the Chamber, Eric Kinda, the Economic Development Director. Aaron. Also, I'd like to move on to our friends from Reading. Matt Crudulis, the Town Manager, Reading. Where are you, Matt? There you are, Matt. Jane Wellman, the Assistant Town Manager. There we go. From North Reading, Mike Giliberto, Town Manager. Mike, where are you? There we go. That was really nice of you all to sit at the same table. You're making this a little easy for me. So that means Lilia Hartman must be over there too. There we go. Thank you, Lillian. And Stoneham, Dennis Sheehan, the Town Administrator. Who? Oh, I guess we knew where that came from. Where's Representative Hagerty? I am so sorry. This morning I addressed Representative Day as Representative Hagerty, and he said, well...
That's the best compliment you got all week. That's exactly what he said.
Yeah. Tom Wakefield, Select Board from Wakefield. There we go, Reading. And Erin Wortman, the Director of Planning and Community Development. Erin? These individuals I just acknowledged to you and you applauded for are very, very vital to the survival and the success of any chamber. These individuals within their communities have the wayward means, I don't mean wayward, Jonathan, I'm sorry, have the way and means to help us be successful in what we're trying to do for the community. Every community has residents every community needs businesses. The two need to be able to work in harmony, to be able to benefit that town and have a healthy, vibrant town that benefits the business community and the residential community. So through our local representatives, that's how we can make that happen. And I applaud these individuals that are here representing their towns for being to be here and work with their chambers. So with that being said, I would now like to turn the podium over to I was going to, I like to tease Jason. I call him moderator, but when it comes to something like this, he's the game master. He's going to pick and choose which direction we go in. Senator Lewis has been a very good friend to our chambers. We have a question and answer period coming up. I have, through results and responses I've received to myself from constituents of the chamber members, a series of questions that I've given to Jason relative and relevant to things happening in our communities. So he has some questions I've given him which he will address. He will also then take questions from the floor. Jason will direct the questions that needs to be answered that he'd like to avoid, to his friends around him. So if he points to Senator Creighton, it's because Jason doesn't want to give the answer. If he points to one of the other representative, it's the same thing. I do want to acknowledge that our friend and colleague Brad Jones is sitting up here as the lone Republican, so he's going to try to hold the wall as best he can and put his fingers in the dike. And with that, no further ado, Senator Lewis. Senator?
All right, I think this one's me. All right. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, John. Good morning, everyone. I'm State Senator Jason Lewis. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We're delighted to spend the next hour together. I want to start by thanking John Smolinski and the Wakefield Linfield Chamber. I want to thank Megan Day and the Stoneham Chamber and Rob Miner on the North Reading Chamber. I also want to thank Sarah Zyberg from my office, who once again organized this event this year. And thank you, of course, to 4 Points and the staff here at the hotel for again, hosting us for this wonderful breakfast. We greatly appreciate, myself and my colleagues, we greatly appreciate all the good work that our local chambers of commerce do to support our communities and make them a great place to live and work and raise a family. Thank you to all the chamber members who are here with us today, and especially the chamber board members. And thank you also to the local elected officials who are here and the staff from our local communities, especially now when we're seeing public sector workers, disrespected. I want those who are here, who are public sector workers, to know that we respect you and we value and appreciate your work. So thank you. I believe this is our third annual legislative breakfast, so I guess the first two were worth attending, and we're glad to be back for the third. And as you know, from those who've attended in the past, we really like this to be a very engaging, interactive conversation. So, in a moment, each of my colleagues will just say hi and introduce themselves, and then the rest of the time is just going to be engaging with all of you, whatever you have on your mind in terms of questions for us, concerns you want to raise, or feedback you want to share with us, and we'll just go back and forth and hopefully cover a lot of different ground. We're really lucky to have almost everyone from the legislative delegations who represent all these communities with us this morning. It's bipartisan. And this is, you should know that the delegation we have from these communities is a very senior delegation. I was just thinking before when I looked around, I think every single one of us, chairs a committee in the legislature, and Representative Jones is well, he doesn't chair committee, but he has an even more senior position. He's the minority leader in the House of Representatives. So we have a lot of seniority, a lot of experience, and are part of the leadership conversations that go on Beacon Hill. So why don't we start, Representative Haggerty? You want to just say hi, introduce yourself, and then everyone will just introduce themselves, and then we'll go from there.
Representative Rich Haggerty, representing the town of Reading. It's great to see our local officials here with us, as well as the city of Woburn, and it's a pleasure every year to come back and spend some time listening and learning and hopefully getting an update on what's going on our end. So thank you.
Stand up so Hi, I'm Representative Michael Day. I represent the towns of Stoneham and Winchester. I am known up on the Hill as the chair of the Judiciary Committee, and Rep. Hagerty's been a little modest, who's just named the chair of the Housing Committee up there as well. And everywhere outside the State House, I'm known as Megan's husband, running around helping out with the chamber events. But I want to say thank you to everyone who's in the chamber and everyone who works at the chamber, because what you all do actually defines our communities. You've got a great job, obviously, in Stoneham. I'm a little partial, but the summer concert series, various parades, business outings, where the kids get out, the families get out and see how important the small businesses are to our communities. So just want to say thank you and happy to be here this morning.
Good morning, everyone. Representative Kate Lippert-Garabedian. I live in Melrose and represent that city as well as a part of the city of Malden and the town of Wakefield. Lovely to see our local partners and leaders here today. Representative Wong sends his regrets, and we really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Representative Brad Jones, Reading, North Reading, Linfield, and Middleton, serve as the minority leader in the House of Representatives. Great to see so many familiar faces and friendly faces here today. Thanks for all you do, and look forward to questions and answers.
Good morning, everyone. Brendan Crichton. I'm the State Senator for the 3rd Essex District, representing the communities of Lynn, Linfield, Marblehead, Nahant, Saugus, and Swampscott. I'm going to repeat everything that everyone just said. I recently was reappointed to the Chair of Transportation on the Senate side. I know that's of great interest to folks here, and certainly how it impacts your businesses, but also your communities, economic development, economic mobility, housing crisis, climate change, a wide range of issues. So I really appreciate the back and forth conversation we've had over the years and look forward to a fruitful discussion here today. Thank you.
All right, and yes, so Representative Donald Wong was hoping to be with us. He sends his regrets. And Senator Tarr, who also has sometimes been with us in the past, also sends his regrets. But I believe Kristen McDonald's here from Senator Tarr's office, so thank you for being here. And I should have mentioned at the outset when I introduced myself, so I represent Malden, Melrose, Reading, Stoneham, Wakefield, and Winchester, and I serve as the Senate Chair of the Education Committee. So you actually have the Chair of the Education Committee here, Transportation, Housing, Judiciary. That's what I meant when I said earlier we would have a very senior delegation. All right, so I'm going to just give just 1 minute of some context, sort of where we are in the legislative cycle, and then some questions were submitted in advance, so we'll start with those. But we definitely want to hit lots of questions and feedback from all of you. Unfortunately, the only microphone in the room is this one right here. So when my colleagues are speaking, I think we're going to try standing up or sitting, but just projecting. Hopefully, you'll be able to hear them. If you have trouble hearing anyone, just say so, and they'll come over and use the microphone, because we want to make sure you can hear everything they have to say. And then when you, ask us questions, we don't have a microphone for the floor, but just if you could stand up, tell us who you are, and then just try to, speak as loud as you can. All right? So we just wrapped up the last legislative session. Our sessions are run 2 years. We wrapped it up at the end of December, and that saw the final passage of a number of very significant pieces of legislation. So some of you may have heard about these, but if you haven't, a major economic development bill that was a top priority for Governor Healy and the legislature cleared final passage, and that is now being implemented. We can talk more about that if there's specific interests or questions about it. There were also 3 significant healthcare bills that also their work was completed on those. One of those addresses prescription drug costs. The second is designed to strengthen market oversight and transparency in healthcare. This was really in the wake of the Stewart debacle. And the third healthcare bill is aimed at continuing our efforts to combat substance use disorder. There's also another very significant climate and energy bill that passed that is designed to speed up siting and permitting of infrastructure that needs to be built as we continue to build out our electric grid and renewable energy infrastructure. And then earlier in the year, there was also a very significant housing bill actually the largest investment in housing that the state has made in its history, and another priority of Governor Healy and the legislature, and that was signed by the governor earlier last year. So those are just some of the highlights. There were a lot of other things that got done as well, but just those few I wanted to mention. Then on January 1st, actually on New Year's Day, myself and my colleagues were all sworn in by the governor for the new legislative term. And as I said, that will run for 2 years, is how our legislative terms work. We have now organized our committees. Chairs were appointed by the Senate President and the Speaker of the House, and members of the committees have been appointed. And there's been several thousand bills that have been filed by state representatives and state senators. That's very typical at the beginning of a legislative session. And public hearings on all those bills will now begin, and that's the next step in the legislative process. So those bills are all going to now get evaluated, go through the legislative process. Lastly, we're also in the middle of the state budget process, which is the most important thing that the legislature does each year. That process began in January when the governor puts forward her proposal. This is for fiscal year 26, which starts on July 1st of this year, 25. The next step is the House of Representatives will take up the budget in April. The state Senate will take up the budget in May. Then there's an effort to reconcile whatever differences there are between the two branches and get that final budget to the governor by, hopefully, before the new fiscal year starts. The biggest challenge I'll say that we're currently facing right now is uncertainty. Uncertainty about federal spending cuts and big policy shifts that we're seeing from the Trump administration. These can impact Massachusetts in many different ways. Just to give you a few examples, the proposed NIH, National Institutes of Health, cuts to scientific research. Massachusetts is the largest recipient per capita in the country of scientific research dollars that go to our universities, our hospitals, some of our companies directly. So that potentially has a huge impact on us. Layoffs of federal workers and related contractors and others. We're already seeing those impacts right here locally in terms of our federal workforce. There's also the potential workforce impacts of immigration policies and what that could do in terms of contributing to labor shortages in our communities, particularly in certain sectors of the economy. There's also the potential impact on our economy from tariffs and a more uncertain and volatile business environment. I think we're all worried about that. We saw that reaction just yesterday, right, in the reaction of the stock market. And then from a state budget standpoint, probably the biggest thing we're very worried about is the potential for federal cuts to federal funding that are essential to balancing our state budget. The Massachusetts state budget is roughly $60 billion a year. $15-ish billion of that is federal money. So we actually rely less on federal money than many other states do, but still $15 billion is a significant chunk of our budget. Most of that money is Medicaid. The federal government matches, and in Massachusetts, that's our Mass Health program. Several million Massachusetts residents rely on Mass Health, and that not just low-income folks, people with disabilities, seniors, covers most of our nursing home costs, long-term care, many other, maternal health, many other areas of health care. So the federal government matches essentially 50-50 our Medicaid costs. So if there's a major cut there, which is what's being contemplated in Congress, we don't know what we will do because backfilling that is probably not realistic. So that's kind of the big picture where we're at, and let's open it up for your questions. So in terms of what was submitted in advance, which actually we just saw this morning, so no time to prepare, but the first one is actually from Peter Dion, who heads up the Wakefield Municipal Light Plant, and I think Peter's not able to be with us this morning, but did want to raise concerns about some of the regulations that are being considered by the Department of Public Utilities, the DPU. So just wanted to put out there for those who are following this or interested in this topic that a number of us have met with Peter and his team recently, and to listen to these concerns. And also a number of us also met, when was it, a few months ago, with the Reading Municipal Light Plant as well. So we very much appreciate the work that our municipal light plants do in serving Reading, North Reading as well, right, Wakefield. They provide very reliable service at an affordable cost, and they're doing a great job also with their conversion to clean energy sources. So we're strong supporters of our municipal light plants, and we'll continue to do so, and continue to be advocates for them in terms of some of these concerns they have with some of the DPU regulations. So I think we'll leave that one there. The next couple questions were mostly about basically about the state budget, and mentioning that Governor Healy has proposed her budget for fiscal year '26. It would be $62 billion. It's actually a pretty healthy increase. Her budget's about a 7% increase. There's some concerns about that, whether that's sustainable. I'm just reading the question here. Once again this year, she is seeking to pair this budget increase with a separate municipal package, allowing cities and towns to increase optional taxes on room occupancy, auto excise, and meals. And so the question is basically, what's the legislature's plan? The backdrop to this obviously is concern about high costs, especially small businesses dealing with high utility bills, lease costs, food costs, employee healthcare, as we all know of, affordability and is a major concern for our residents and our businesses. So I guess it's generally a question about how are we as legislators thinking about this environment and as we work on the state budget. So I think we'll start there, and I'm going to open it up. Whoever from my colleagues wants to kick us off here. I don't know, maybe a House colleague?
Great, answering all the questions.
Maybe a House colleague, since the House is going to be taking up the budget in just a month. Share some thoughts on the process. All right, Rep. Day.
The budget is a conversation, and the governor has started the conversation. The anecdote is that we in the House get that budget and deposit it right in the trash. And then we offer our take. And then the Senate does the same with ours. Puts theirs in the trash, and then they start theirs, and then there's a three-way conversation that occurs over the course of months. The debate on the House floor will be coming up shortly, and that's where you'll really see the value statement of who we are as residents of Massachusetts coming out with various amendments and various different shapings of policy proposals. I pretty much guarantee you that the Chapter 70 figures that the governor released are too low for the House. And so we'll be taking steps to increase that, which means cuts elsewhere and shifting of policies. So look at the governor's budget as her first salvo in this discussion, and understand that we're going to be moving that discussion in different directions based on the priorities of both chambers. At the end of the day, come July, we'll have that final decision. And it's not a conversation limited to the State House. So the input we receive from our communities makes a huge difference in what we end up doing. You'll see the amendments that we file, not only for earmarks, but also for larger spending pieces in the state government. So that's kind of where we are right now. We're at the beginning of this discussion. The hearings are ongoing now from the administration, different agencies are testifying before us, joint committees on Ways and Means. And we'll take that into consideration and then shape our own budget. And as I said, the Senate will do that, exercise themselves, and then we'll arrive at the final piece. So hopefully that adds some color as to where we are right now.
Okay. Anybody want to add anything? No? We're good?
Nailed it.
You're good? Okay. So the only thing I'll add is that we absolutely are very sensitive to and concerned about affordability and cost of living. You may have seen the governor just announced, actually I think yesterday, continued efforts around utility costs for residents and small businesses. And she's taking some immediate actions which will modestly impact utility bills, electric and gas. She's also going to be filing some legislation that she said will result in some larger savings over the long term. So I'm sure we all look forward to seeing that and evaluating, her proposals there. Certainly, healthcare, I mentioned several healthcare bills we passed, one of which is really aimed at reducing prescription drug costs. We continue to be very concerned about the stability of our healthcare system, access to primary care, mental health care, and the costs of healthcare, which is always a major concern for businesses and for the state as well. And in terms of taxes, there was a very significant tax cut, tax legislation that reduced taxes that we passed, not last year, but the year before. So we recognize that, that's not an area I think we would be looking to increase taxes. And, it'll all be part of the mix as we go through this process. Again, with the biggest uncertainty out there, what happens with federal dollars. All right, the next question we got was about unemployment insurance. And the question is, the state unemployment insurance fund has a looming deficit of roughly $2 billion, which were incorrectly spent by the previous administration. And the concern is about the burden of repayment being placed on businesses instead of being taken on by the state. This UI fund, I'm just reading the question, already seems to be a collapsing system and should be fixed. So just generally concerns about the unemployment insurance system. The backdrop to this is obviously when COVID hit, we saw a huge increase in unemployment, and that required a very significant increase in the number of people receiving benefits. The amount of the benefits was also increased, and then there was also some federal programs that were layered on top of our traditional state unemployment. And unfortunately, there was an error made in terms of using federal money that we should have been using state dollars by the former administration. It was inadvertent, but that the federal government is requiring the state to pay back most of that. And that was an agreement that was worked out at the very end of the Biden administration. So that is hanging over us. We will, the legislature and the governor certainly will continue to look at, the unemployment insurance system, and again, recognize that is also a cost that is borne by our businesses, and one that we need to do what we can to manage that. Does anyone want to add anything on unemployment insurance? And Brad, you're an expert on this.
All right, I win the bet with Brandon because I said he's going to call on me. No, but I think Jason touched on it. Obviously, it was a big number, and I think one of the things that we're still dealing with on constituents, and I think most of them can attest to us, is constituents who reach out on unemployment assistance and find out that they're blocked out from receiving something they're legally entitled to because they're a victim of identity theft from someone who took advantage of the system during COVID. Because one of the things that happened was a lot of the checks and balances that would normally be in place were sort of the security measures were toggled off so that people could get benefits quickly and expeditiously. And that's one of the things, even today, I had someone here today, already wrote the name down, they're going to email me later on, talk about a family experience with a relative who can't get benefits because they were a victim of identity theft. And until that's resolved, they can't get, and that manifests itself not being able to pay their bills or to survive, and then realize that somebody made off. I actually qualified for unemployment benefits in Massachusetts because my identity was. I was also given a small business farm loan for the federal government for $115,000. Though I don't have a farm, and I also qualified for unemployment benefits in the state of Hawaii. So it was pretty great. But obviously, that's people who had stolen identities, and then when the COVID hit, ramped up the system and took advantage, and how many millions of dollars flowed out. I happen to be one that believes that we probably have to try a blended approach to try to recover the $2.5 billion, $2.1 billion we have to repay plus interest, and hope that there's a way we can do that. There's also legislation pending to look at the whole unemployment system, because we obviously have a very expensive, very generous state, and whether there's some things that we can do to kind of measure the cost and the money that goes out. But there's obviously going to be some impact on the business community in trying to recover that money to the federal government.
Okay, good. Anyone else? All right. Thank you, Representative Jones. The last question that was submitted in advance, and then we're going to open it up, so think about what you want to ask us, was about actually a bill that I filed that is one I've been filing with the Retailers Association, and that would basically reconstitute an Office of Main Streets within state government. We used to have one a long time ago, and at some point it got shut down. But the idea is that this office would be a way to provide support and technical assistance to cities and towns in terms of helping to make our downtowns more vibrant, seeking out grant money that's available and other resources. And the question was a concern about chambers of commerce not being included in that or being excluded. I want to assure our chamber directors and board members that's not the intent at all. Chambers of Commerce would be critical partners in this effort, and this Office of Main Streets, were we to pass this bill and create it, would work with our chambers of commerce and with our main streets organizations that we have in some of our cities and towns, together collaboratively on strategies, many of which we're already doing, here in our communities, that help to increase investment in our downtowns, improve walkability, improve the vitality, improve, access for different modes of transportation, support the housing efforts we're doing, those kinds of things. So anyway, this is again something that has been a priority for the Massachusetts Retailers Association, and that's where the legislation originated. But appreciate that our chambers need to be absolutely at the table. All right, so that's what we got in advance. Do you want to add something on that?
I just wanted to add something that's sort of on theme, which is that in our current fiscal year budget, one thing that we decided to empower the administration to do is create a business front door portal, and that is up and running now. That was something that the Secretary of Economic Development came and spoke to the Ways and Means Committee about in Gloucester last year. I was on that committee at the time. So in addition to things like our small business technical assistance grants, which I know many small businesses in my district have taken advantage of, this is sort of a place that allows businesses to get a sense of all of the different programs and resources that are available to them. So you can find that online now.
Great. Great. Thank you, Representative Garabedian, for adding that. Are you all able to hear okay? That's working fine. Great. All right. So we're going to open it up, and anyone who wants to share anything with us, ask a question, just raise your hand. Just stand if you don't mind. Just make sure and let us know the room know who you are, and then just project your question.
I think I have an easy one. Michael Gilberto, Town Administrator in North Reading. I heard from the House side with regard to the governor's budget and the Chapter 70. That's encouraging news to hear. Just wondering what the Senate side might have to offer on that, whether it's sort of in the same position.
They'll go higher than the House side.
Yep, we usually like to one-up the House. So, no, I mean, seriously, the Chapter 70, for those who don't know, is the state's, that's our education funding for public schools. I mentioned before how important Medicaid is to our state budget. It's the biggest part of the budget. The second biggest part of the state budget is the Chapter 70 program, education funding. So it's a top priority, I'm sure, for every single person sitting up here. It's very bipartisan. And we will certainly, there's a complicated formula that determines, how much each community actually gets, but there's a little bit of leeway for us to impact that and to try to, provide as much as we can. So we all are acutely aware of the fiscal challenges facing, our communities. Stoneham is looking at an override in just a couple weeks. And Melrose is talking about an override later this year. They tried one last year that didn't succeed. We know about the challenges, that are really across the board. And this is true, really, we're hearing this from our colleagues who represent all parts of Massachusetts, that this is just we're in one of those cycles where the fiscal challenges at the local level are very severe right now. And there's a variety of reasons for that. So we're very aware of that. Within the constraints we have to pass a balanced budget, we certainly will be prioritizing school funding, local aid, and those kinds of accounts. All right. Anyone want to add anything else? Good. All right. Thanks for that. Yes.
Hi.
Matt.
Yes, Matt Pinellas, Town of Reading. I'm wondering about the status of virtual meetings that we've gotten used to since COVID. I believe it expires at the end of the month, if it hasn't been passed already, and that would be a big bind on us for our local meetings and also to the residents who are sort of getting accustomed to that. So could you give us an update on where that might stand and if you think it will pass by the end of the month?
So, yeah, thank you, Matt. What Matt's referring to is one of the things that, there weren't many, but one of the few good things that came out of the pandemic was, virtual and hybrid meetings, right, that we've all been using in our businesses and for government meetings. In order for select board meetings and city council and school committee and so on, they are subject to the state's open meeting law, and in order to have virtual meetings, the state legislature and former Governor Baker had to authorize that. So we did that during the pandemic, and then since then, we've extended that several times. But as Matt's saying, that authorization is due to run out at the end of the month. And so I know we are actively discussing what to do. I think it's possible we'll temporarily extend it again, but there is conversations about trying to make that permanent. There's a little bit of a difference of opinion on, exactly what the requirements should be, and that's why we sort of haven't made it permanent already, because there's not yet a consensus on that. But we certainly, I think everyone's aware of how important that is to allow for continued flexibility in conducting those meetings. So, yeah. So we do need a legislative vehicle to do that. So I don't.
There's been several bills filed.
There's not one
I know
currently.
Senator Tarr has filed
Yeah.
one. Representative Cabral has filed one. Representative Gregoire has filed one, I
Yeah.
believe. I think the difference is, I think Senator Tarr's is simply move it up a year or maybe 2 years. Others have more of a mandatory, like you have to do this. Others are more like, we'll continue it, and it's still a local option about doing it. Because some communities may not have the infrastructure technologically to do it. Others may be up and running to do it. I think all of us, I don't certainly want to speak for all of us, but I think all of us would be at least comfortable kicking out a year or two, at a minimum. But I think the vehicle Jason's talking about is, those committees haven't even heard those bills yet. There is a supplemental budget pending that the governor's filed. That's something that can maybe make its way into that, and be done, fairly quickly. But legislative action is something of an oxymoron, so hopefully we'll get to it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it's good you raised it. I mean, I am a little worried because it expires, again, it does require us to take, intentional action with, it does require a piece of legislation. So hopefully there's something that we'll be moving this month. It doesn't have to, it could be an unrelated bill, but we just need to be able to include it in that, at least to give it, at least a temporary extension. All right, anyone else? We're good? Okay. All right, yep, let's go over here. We'll just kind of work our way around.
Okay. I'm David Watts Jr. I'm a professional photographer, filmmaker, and historian. And for more than 3 decades, Wakefield Community Access Television, WCAT, has been providing programming and services to the community and are responsible for the public and government channels, the educational channel being with the high school. They're one of many organizations throughout the state and communities that do this. Funding has always been by way of the contractual franchise fee paid by the 3 cable providers in Wakefield's case. Under the current contracts, the franchise fee is a percentage of revenue from local subscribers. As cable subscribers continue to decline, many customers are dropping cable in favor of the plethora of streaming services. PEG funding has been constantly falling to the detriment of local PEG entities. The future of PEG is under serious threat. For 3 consecutive legislative sessions, 6 years, a bill has been under consideration in both legislative chambers. In the first 2 sessions, the bills went nowhere in both chambers and died at the conclusion of each session. In the last legislative session, the reintroduced bill was modified to insignificance and still allowed to die with the end of the session. This is the streaming bill. This is to now require streaming services to pay a percentage the way that cable services do now. In the new session, the last version, the greatly weakened form of the bill, has been reintroduced for the 4th time. It awaits assignment of a bill number in each chamber. Would you please address this bill, why it has not moved forward in 6 years, further endangering the future of PEG across the state, and what you will commit to doing now to change the situation and ensure the future of PEG in Massachusetts.
Mike, this is a question. Me? No, I'm kidding.
Let me just thank you for that question and putting that issue front and center. And thank you to WCAT for being here today and recording, televising the meeting. Well, I can start because it's actually my bill. So, yeah, I've been pleased to work with our local cable access stations, community media, and with Mass Access, which is the state organization that represents all of our local community media stations, and to file this legislation, which proposes an alternative way to fund community media, because as you said in your question, it's been funded by a fee on cable bills, but as people, cut the cord on cable and don't subscribe anymore, that revenue stream is declining. So we are continuing to make the case for this, and we have seen progress on Beacon Hill in terms of more support building and more awareness of the issue. I'll just be honest with you that the challenge we still face is the issue we were talking about at the beginning of the meeting, affordability concerns, people concerned about the cost of living, and so this would, because this would put a fee on streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, and so on, that we are facing some concern about that. So that's what we have to overcome, and I think we have to continue to make the case that community media is so important to to our local communities, especially given the local journalism landscape, and so much of that local journalism has dried up or gone away entirely. And especially back to the earlier question, about being able to do remote public meetings and hybrid meetings. Again, our community media is instrumental and essential to doing that. So, so I'm certainly going to do everything I can to continue to push for this legislation. But that's probably the challenge we've been facing. Does anybody? Let me just see if anyone wants to add anything else.
I'll just add, that's a bill that I care a lot about as well, and I think many people up here do, because we do recognize the incredible value of our PEG stations. I know that the Wakefield delegation achieved an earmark for WCAT a couple fiscal years ago. And in addition to, having, taking Senator Lewis's suggestions under account, I think there's also the ISP or the app providers also raise their own objections. Now, those can be overcome, but, to the degree that there are folks in this room who want to be involved in the advocacy effort on Beacon Hill, I would say, whoever is supporting mass media, making sure that you're getting time in front of the chairs of the committee. Probably it'll be Advanced IT again. That's Representative Tricia Farley-Bouvier and Senator Michael Moore, taking time with their staff to really impress upon them the importance of this bill, checking out who's on that committee, working to have meetings with them, and maybe reviewing mass media strategy in the past in terms of who are your champions in both of the chambers. I think you have a great champion in Senator Lewis, but just making sure that you're aware of who's kind of carrying the bill, and having a strong partnership with those folks as well.
The other thing I've certainly encouraged Mass Access and the folks, from Wakefield and elsewhere working on this is to build out more allies. So, for example, the Mass Municipal Association would be hopefully a natural ally on something like this. I know we've done some outreach to them. Also, it would be great to get some support from the governor and her team as well. I've never heard the governor weigh in on this before, but that's another area I think we can kind of grow our support base. All right, let's go to, I think there was another question here.
Peter Rossetti, Saugus, member of the school committee for the Northeast Regional Vote. Question, we're hearing that the Department of Education may be eliminated. If that happens, what would be the impact on Massachusetts, and what specific programs might be affected?
Short answer is we don't know. It's just another huge cloud of uncertainty, that's hanging over us. A lot of what the Department of Education does is higher ed. They process student loans, Pell Grants and things. So presumably we're not going to do away entirely with the student loan program. So that would have to get transferred somewhere else. And then the Department of Education also handles the two major federal funding streams for education. One of those is called Title I, which goes to lower-income schools, authorized by Congress, and the other is funding for special education. So again, those are funding streams that Congress, that's been very bipartisan. Congress has supported them. The Department of Education just administers that. So those funding streams would presumably still be funded and administered. So maybe it would be moved around within the federal government, but it's, we don't know. There are some more discretionary grant programs that the Department of Education does administer, and in fact, we started to see some impact on Massachusetts on that. In fact, I just saw the Department of Education and the governor announced earlier this week there was, I think it was a $12 million grant program from the USDA, was for food security, it supports some of our meal programs, and they were announced that funding was not going to be released. So it's a relatively small amount, but again, every dollar matters, and so we're starting to see that. But again, short answer, we don't really know exactly how this will play out. Anyone want to add anything else?
I'm just hearing from a lot of constituents who are really concerned about that. They have children with IEPs or 504s, and they're worried about, their services continuing. The food security is a huge issue. And as someone who works in a legislature, I can't imagine the governor, if we appropriate the money, just, unilaterally saying, I'm not releasing that, even though you, in a bipartisan way, have seen fit to pass this budget. It's frankly outrageous.
Anyone else?
Also,
Okay.
Jason, on Title
Yep.
I, we can hope that Congress will stand up on this issue, because the truth is that Title I actually benefits, not that it's a red and blue issue, but Title I benefits more red states than it does blue states mathematically per capita. So the reality is we are hopeful, I think, that you're going to see some folks in Congress stand up on the Republican side and oppose any changes to Title I.
So about 90% of money for public schools in Massachusetts is state and local money. It's obviously local dollars funded mostly by property taxes, and then the state money is that Chapter 70 program I spoke about. But the federal dollars, even though it's a relatively small amount, they're critical, and so again, to the point of my colleagues, that's appropriated by Congress. We should be able to count on that money. There's strong bipartisan support, but who knows, given what we're all seeing right now. And thank you for your service on the Northeast School Committee. We're very excited about the new building, and look forward to the new regional vocational school opening. It's going to be an incredible resource for our communities, and we're seeing tremendous demand for vocational technical seats, not just at Northeast, but across the state. And we're thrilled that the new Stoneham High School is open, and soon we'll have a new high school in Wakefield as well. So those are great local investments. Yep.
Good morning. My name is Hilda Torres. Just talking about early education, I would like for you to just give us an update on early education, on the grants that they are to help out to keep the costs low for middle class families that they bring the kids to early education.
Okay. Do you want to start with that one? I know you've done a lot of work on this.
Well, sure, and so haven't you. But yes, thank you for the question. I think this will be the third chamber breakfast where early education has been something I've talked about, because it's an issue that I really care deeply about. I'm so proud of the legislature for really leading on this. Senator Lewis was on the commission that studied the issue during the COVID years, and so in the most recent fiscal year budget, which we sort of forecast this time last year, the House and the Senate agreed to make those C3 grants permanent and bake them into sort of our ongoing commitment to the ecosystem, because I think you probably, as an advocate and champion for this area as well, agree it's not only a benefit to the student and the educators that are preparing our young people for success in K-12 and beyond, it's also such a critical component of ensuring working families can stay active in the workforce and increase their family's earning potential as well. So it has multiple benefits. So yes, we were really thrilled to do that. So we expanded funding for the C3 grants at $475 million, and we made the program permanent. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
And again, this remains a top priority for the legislature. I know it's a top priority for the governor and her team, so even though, I think the budget's going to be a lot more challenging this year, I think continuing to support our early education providers and families, who need access to affordable, high-quality childcare, it's critical to our employers, I think is going to continue to be a high priority for us. Okay, another question? We must have more questions. Yes.
Good morning, my name is Geeta Ramani and I work at Mass Development, which is a quasi-state entity. I have one question and one comment. First, my question, I actually want to commend all of the legislation that was passed last year. There were so many important pieces of legislation that will really tackle many problems, challenges in the state. The housing bond bill, Mass Leads Act, et cetera. What I wanted to know is kind of what is the next step in terms of enabling the funding to flow to activate those programs? And I just wanted to understand kind of the current status. Given that those were passed last year, that was actually, I don't know, around the same time, post-budget, concurrent with the budget. Are funds, have they been earmarked to enable the activation of those programs, or is a lot of that also tied up in the budget discussions that are about to kick off next month? So I don't know if that's a question that any of you can answer, because I think that's very important, because there's a lot of programs that everyone is reading about, but they want to know, well, when do they start? When does the money hit the road, or the communities? And we want to be able to facilitate that. So that's my question for the group. And then my comment, thank you for plugging the business front door. Mass Development is one of the 12 agencies working on launching the business front door. We are super excited that it's now live. We've been doing a soft launch since November. 130 companies participated, and now it's open. Anyone can go, any business owner can go to www.mass.gov/BFD. Business front door, and you can create a profile, look at all the resources at the state level, both grant funding and debt funding, to really help your business grow. And I really encourage anyone who's interested, please look at that. If you have any questions, I'll be sticking around, happy to answer them. But I wanted to plug that. And then I also want to plug the Community One Stop. The deadline is coming up for municipalities, private business owners. This is an opportunity to provide some grant funding for creating the livable, walkable communities at the local level. And there's programs like the Underutilized Properties Program, which provides grant funding to unlock underused buildings to make them active. There's a lot of other programs as well. I think this is a great opportunity, in light of everything that's happening, for communities to look and see how can they take advantage of these programs to get the funding to continue their progress towards the goals that they have. So that's my.
Thank you so much. There was a lot there, and thank you for everything Mass Development does. You do a great job, supporting our communities, our businesses, our nonprofits. So there was a lot in your question. The short answer is from the housing bill we passed, the climate bill, the economic development. There's a range of different tools and strategies included in those. Some of those are bond authorizations, where the legislature is authorizing money to be borrowed and spent. Then it's up to the Healy administration to make the actual decisions as to exactly, what's going to be funded and the time frame for that. Some of that was tax credits, like in the housing space especially. Some of it is grant money that will be rolled out by the various state agencies responsible for those grant programs. So all of that is in process and happening. And those are all programs and in the climate tech space, life sciences, housing, that are all being essentially authorized for over multiple years through those pieces of legislation. And then the annual budget that we're working on now, also sort of dovetails with that, through investments we're making, also through the, through the regular annual budget process. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use your question as a springboard, because housing is a critical issue for our communities. So, and we have the new, I'm going to put him on the spot, but Representative Haggerty is actually just recently named as the new House Chair of the Housing Committee, a very important, prominent role in recognizing his good work. So I'm going to let him talk a bit about where things are with housing and housing policies, and then I'm going to put Senator Crichton on the line, because Senator Crichton's again the chair of another very important committee, transportation. also critical to our communities, right? Where are we with the MBTA? Where are we, with fixing the Orange Line and the commuter rail, and just general investments in transportation? So be on deck, Senator Crichton. You can share a few thoughts with everyone in terms of what's happening on the transportation side of things. All right, so Representative Haggerty.
So with regards to your question, specifically, earlier this week I had conversations with the Department of Housing and Livable Communities. They're working through some of the directives we gave them with regards to funding requests. The bond bill was the largest bond bill we've ever done for housing. 2018, we did a $2 billion housing bond bill. This past year, we did over $5 billion in authorizations. Our hope is that things will get out on the street as soon as humanly possible, but they have a lot to work through. A couple of big components of that bill, just to kind of highlight, $2 billion in our public housing stock to be able to upgrade that. We know that it's critical for a lot of folks in our communities where they're living, making sure that their heating systems are taken care of, their roofs are taken care of. You can go down the list. So $2 billion in our public housing stock. $175 million to help communities be able to upgrade their infrastructure so that they can continue to encourage more housing development in their communities. Another thing important, a lot of local communities, $25 million in technical support to make sure that communities have the tools they need when they're working on housing projects to get them out on the street quicker, get it through the permitting process quicker, and get them built. Housing continues to remain a critical issue for our state. We've taken a series of measures over the course of the last few sessions to try to address that. Some really, really aggressive. MBTA Communities Bill comes to mind, Senator Crichton. And some of these things happen, and they're controversial. But at the end of the day, we all know that when you talk about housing, to use the word Senator Lewis used, it dovetails with our economic development. At the end of the day, making sure that businesses want to come to the state of Massachusetts, want to stay in the state of Massachusetts, want to create jobs, their employees need a place to live, and they need an affordable place to live. And, we talk about, virtual work and things like that. That puts Massachusetts in a position where there's real concern about businesses leaving our state and our employees leaving our state. So we want to make sure that we're doing every single thing we can to continue to make sure that we have the housing stock that our employees need and that businesses need, which I know is important to folks in this room. So, and as was mentioned, the other piece, I think, of the housing bond bill was around encouraging developers and folks who are going to create housing the opportunity to be able to take advantage of some different tax credits to get the type of housing, the density of housing that we need in order to meet the goal we have of creating a huge number of housing opportunities in our Commonwealth over the course of the next specifically 5 years. So we're hopeful that's going to get out on the street as quickly as we can to make sure everybody has the tools they need to create this housing. And that's the best we can do, I think, at this point. And I think it's a huge step forward to address our huge housing crisis.
Thank you. Just to build off what Chair Haggerty said, I think, and we've talked about this before at this breakfast, the key to solving our housing crisis, some of the most expensive rents in the country, some of the most expensive home ownership costs in the country is going to be through production. And I think we've made a lot of strides over the past few years working with then Governor Baker and now Governor Healy to do just that. Fortunately, it takes time. I do think, chairing the Transportation Committee is directly connected on the housing as well. Just when you think about where we're going to build these, transit-oriented development obviously would really help go a long way. And I think that was part of the aim. We can have a long conversation about the MBTA Communities Act, but certainly recognizing that this is a crisis and that some of the traditional ways we've tried to solve it haven't worked. On the transportation end, I'm very pleased that the governor, through her budget and some other bills that she's filed so far, is really tackling the issue head on. So whether or not you're an MBTA user or a public transit user, or RTAs as well, or you're someone that relies on our roads, we are facing huge deficits, both on the operations side and just a lack of capital investment that really hasn't changed for decades. So through some creative budgeting, we're still reviewing it, really leveraging the fair share dollars that we get for both transportation and education, putting that into a plan, and it's a little complicated in the weeds to dive into, but by leveraging that money and the excess funds that we didn't anticipate getting in fair share, it's really been, our budget's been steady, though rocky here and there, but fair share has gone above expectations for the last few years. So having seen that and kind of understanding what we can expect for revenue, I think now we can put the money to good use. Without this maneuver, you're looking at an MBTA with an over $700 million operating deficit just this year. Massachusetts isn't going to run it without the MBTA, and really, if we do not plug that gap, we are going to look at service cuts as well as fare increases at a time where we're trying to reestablish that trust. I think Phil Lang has done a tremendous job as a general manager in being open and direct about the problems we face, about the delays you're going to experience, about the hard times we're going to have correcting the system. But we're making progress, and I think it would really set ourselves back if we don't fill that gap and we have to put more burden on the riders. And again, whether you drive a car or you hop on a train or a bus, it's all linked together. The more folks we can get onto public transportation, obviously the less congested our roads would be. But it's really an issue I look forward. I think it's a priority of every member here, certainly. I've been up to the State House now in different roles for 19 years as a staff and then as a rep, now as a senator. And back in the day, I felt like you do transportation one year, and then it's not another 5 or 10 years before you do it again. You do housing one session, we're not going to do that again. We just did that. I think now what you're seeing is on these bigger issues, whether it's climate change, housing, healthcare, transportation, every session we're picking off where we left off and trying to build on that progress. Anyways, sorry for the long-winded answer.
No, thank you so much, Senator Crichton and Rep. Hagerty. That was very helpful. Two critical issues, I'm sure, to everyone in the room. We have maybe 10 more minutes, so if there are more questions, please just let us know, stand up, or feedback you want to share with us, or anything you want to mention. Otherwise, I'll open the floor to any of my colleagues who, anything else that we haven't discussed that you want to share with our audience today. Just looking around. Okay, all right. Over here, anyone want to add? No? We're good? Anything else you want to add? All right, we're good? We can wrap up?
I've never seen state reps not want to talk. I'm just befuddled. I'm staying here.
I'm a little surprised too. Let me wrap up by saying then, again, we greatly appreciate this opportunity. Each one of us really loves engaging with our constituents. We all, have office hours in our communities where folks can stop and see us. You can always call us, email us. We love having visitors at the State House as well. So you don't have to wait for events like this to engage with us. We want to be, we want to be in the community. We are in the community a lot. We want to hear from you. So again, don't be shy. You should feel free at any time to reach out to, any one of us with anything you want to discuss. We welcome that. And thank you again, everybody. Thank you, John.
I would just like to take a quick moment to thank Senator Lewis and Senator Crichton for coming out. Also, Minority Leader Jones, who's been a very good friend to us here locally. Kate Lippert-Garabedian, who's been a big plus in Wakefield supporting the chamber. Senator Hagerty, I gave you promotion. Representative Hagerty, Representative Day. I've honestly, they've taken their time out. I want to thank them very much. And Senator Lewis, I'm very happy to hear that in that bill for the main streets, the chambers will be included in the federal funding access that's in there, because we all can use the money. So I'm sure it'll be helpful. With that, everyone, thank you. I'm just kidding, because we're not in that bill for the funding. So he's being very polite by nodding his head and saying, you ain't getting a cent. So. But thank you all very much for attending this morning. It's very important to us, for Megan and Rob and myself, to have you come out and support us by participating in a session like this. It helps us understand some of the needs that you have. The questions that we presented were from our membership. They kind of got lumped together because a lot of it was about the budget. But unemployment insurance fund is a big worry for us, because if there's a $2 billion deficit in that unemployment insurance fund, and it comes from the small businesses, that's going to hurt a lot of you in this audience. And even some of the larger companies that have a lot of employees, that's a big hit to their bottom line they have to worry about budgeting for. So there are issues that we need to be concerned with. This is the right forum to bring them up with. Please, since they were so quiet today, don't be hesitant to hold them to the fire down the road and say, you had the chance to tell me, but you didn't. So please stick with them, stay on them, because there are a great group of legislators. Our delegation has been very good to us, and we want to make sure that we support them the way they support us. So with that, thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. Drive safe. We'll see you all again soon in the next chamber function. Thank you.